Hi, I'm the Woodpecker today. In the third part of my edge sander, I'm making both end tables and everything for catching the dust. In the second part of my edge sander build, I managed to make it work and also made the main table. Now I need to take care of the other tables. I begin by the spindle sander table. This one consists of 3 tiers of plywood. I begin by finding the center of each tier. The first thing I do is drill the hole for the bottom tier. But unfortunately, my drill press is not big enough to make this hole. I need to use my drill. Good. 1 tier done. But the center tier is only a wall to collect the dust. So after tracing what I want to keep, I mark where I need to drill the 4 corner holes and drill them. Now I just need to cut the inside. Another tier done. But the top will have a hole as big as these inserts. So the first thing to do is to make a pattern to cut this hole. Here, I make you believe that making this pattern was super easy. But here are all the tests I made before finding the exact size I need. No, it's not a joke. Here are all the pieces I've used to make my tests. But now that I have my pattern, I can glue the aluminum piece on top of it. It's the first time that I use this product. I hope it will hold, but it's much easier than contact cement. After spraying glue on both surfaces and putting them together, just like with contact cement, I apply pressure on it. I also need to get rid of the excess aluminum. Now I just need to put my pattern on top of this glue up. And since my pattern is smaller than the tabletop, it's quite easy to align. I just need to put the corners on the center lines I've made. The first thing I have to do is to route a shallow cut with a pattern bit for the insert. And this is how this will look. I put a straight bit in the router, and with the template guide, I cut a smaller hole a little bit deeper. Now I just need to go to the router table and with a pattern bit, remove what needs to be removed. This will be perfect. Now I can glue both lower tiers together. I put this exactly where it should go and drill 4 dowels alignment holes. Now that I know that the table cannot move, I place the top in place and after checking that it's well centered, I clamp it. Then I put some screws. Now I just need to recut the exterior. The dowels won't be enough to hold this in place, so I will add a block at the back. The first thing I do is to get rid of this. Next, I drill 4 holes to screw this block to the top. Then 2 more for the locking mechanism. After screwing the block in place, I use the holes to guide the drill bit and drill through the table. To lock the table in place, I use brass rods. But those rods are a bit too big, so I need to take care of that. Then I drill a hole inside 2 wooden balls and glue the rods inside those holes. Now I have everything I need to put the table in place. But just like for the big table, I cut the corners at 45 degrees. The last thing to do on this table is to cut the excess dowels inside, because this part needs to be really sleek to make sure no dust will catch on anything. Now I need to take care of the end table. The first thing I do is to cut it to the right size. Since it has a particular shape, I begin by cutting it in cardboard. After cutting the exact shape of the table, I drill a hole so the shaft could pass through. I put my cardboard where it should be and trace the shape I want. With scissors, I cut the shape I've just traced and check if it's okay for me. It is, but a pattern made out of cardboard is really not accurate. So I use it to draw a new pattern on a piece of wood. Using my new wooden pattern, I check if it's still what I want. Since it is, I use this pattern to trace it on the plywood and cut it. On my plan, I quickly draw some brackets, but since the mortar I've used is nowhere close to the one I put on my plan, I will again use cardboard to figure out the shape of the brackets. After a little while, I end up with this shape. And exactly like before, I use this cardboard pattern as a guide and make a brand new pattern made out of wood. With the wooden pattern, it's much sturdier and I can see that this will be perfect. So I use it to trace it on a piece of plywood. Then I go to the bandsaw and roughly cut the shape for both brackets. Now that my brackets are cut, I can glue and screw the whole brackets together. Now that my brackets are cut, I can glue and screw the whole bracket together. As you can see, I also put some pieces of plywood at the top. And here's how everything will look like in the end. This is perfect. I cannot ask for anything more than that. But the table is not thick enough. I have to glue another piece of plywood on it. And while the glue is drying, I add some wings to the table bracket. To do so, I use the piece of plywood that I've removed from the table. After cutting 4 identical blocks, I need to remove one corner on one block. And now I'm able to drill the holes and glue them in place. While the glue dries, I jump on the opportunity to slightly change the shape of the round end, because I noticed that if the sanding belt is not tracking perfectly, it rubs on the wood. After all this, the glue is dry enough so I can make my glue up to the same size as the table. Screwing the bracket in place is not as easy as I thought, because there's not a lot of working space. And after a final test, I can see that it's perfect. I can now stick another piece of aluminum on top of the table. After cutting 2 corners at 45 degrees, I can put the table where it belongs. Drill and screw it in place. As soon as the table is screwed in place, I can, just like for the others, drill some dowels aligning holes. But right now, I figure that I'm stuck a bit. I need to make all the knobs that I will need for my sander before going any further. So I stick my pattern on some pieces of scrap plywood and cut them to a more manageable size. Then I mark the center of each hole and drill them. To use those knobs, I will need to add a spacer. So I will cut them with a hole saw. Then I can finish the shape of the knob. When I'm done, I still need to take care of the spacers. The knob that takes care of the tracking is in fact the simplest one to do. I just need to press on a nut inside the hole I made. But for the others, it's another story. I need to drill a shallow hole to the size of the bolt's head. Then epoxy glue the bolt and the knob together. This doesn't go very fast, but I manage anyway to make all the knobs I need. And now I can continue to work on the sander. And it's time to take care of the back. I begin by cutting all the plywood that I need. And here it is, the first 2 parts. And this is how they will go together. I just need to glue them together. And while the glue is drying, I can cut the small corner blocks. When the glue is dry enough, I can mark and drill holes for the knobs that will screw into the T-nuts inside the case. Nice! The biggest part is in place. Now I need to figure out the center of the sanding belt, mark it, and drill a hole for the dust collection port. To have a super clean hole, I don't drill right through. I just let the tip of the Forstner bit go through, turn the piece around, and finish the hole. And now this hole is the exact size, so I can switch my dust collection from my saw to my sander. Now I need to cut the corner blocks to size and glue them in place. with all the pieces of the right side glued in place, I can screw the hinge at the back. And here's the right size of my dust collection system. Since it can open up, it will be easier for me to turn the tracking knob. But I also can, if I wish, open the door for sanding a longer piece of wood. Now I need to take care of the other side. But all the pieces on this side will be held in place with magnets. So before going any further, I drill the holes for the magnets. And then I can glue everything together. I also need to make this piece, the triangular dust collection for the spindle sander. And to do so, I will use all those pieces. The last thing I do is drill the hole for the vacuum before I can glue all the pieces together. Now I can glue all the pieces together. And to glue this to the side, I use my small piece of rail as a clamp as usual. But I'm not done yet. I also need to cut a hole under the table to collect the dust. I mark and cut it. And here's how everything will go together. If you look from the top, you can clearly see that the dust will go directly inside this hole. And it's now time to make a small test just to see if my dust collection system works. On the sanding belt part, it works like a charm. Same thing for the spindle sander. And now I can see that I have a functional edge sander. But I still have a lot of small things to do, and this is what you will see in the next episode of the Woodpecker.